Hello, my friends. Bradley J. with Doug Arion. Welcome to the broadcast. Doug is an astronomer, among other things, and we're going to talk about the upcoming solar eclipses. Solar eclipses are a big deal, and so the planning starts way in advance, like 1 or 2 years in advance. Doug, thanks for being with us.
Well, thanks, Bradley. I love our little sessions here, and it'd be fun to talk about this. This is great.
Absolutely. Now, solar eclipse is a huge deal, as I mentioned. What makes it such a big deal?
So it's quite a remarkable thing. In fact, I'm going to show everybody a picture here, which will give you an idea of why it is such a big deal thing.
So you want me to do the screen share now?
I got it right there.
All right.
Do you see it?
Yeah, I do. I do. So I just do that, I guess. Well, that's easy enough. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's pretty spectacular. I mean, you're looking at the outer atmosphere of the sun. The whole sun is blocked. And firstly, you can imagine, 1,000 years ago, people would look up and the sun would disappear. And that would, scare the pants off of you. It's really totally amazing to see this. And the thing that makes it so special, besides the fact, that it's spectacular, is that it's really rare. Okay. So, for example, this is a scale of what the moon shadow looks like as it approaches the Earth. And you can see it's really tiny. So the shadow of the moon, when it reaches the Earth, if it happens to line up at all, is only 100 miles wide. So you think the Earth is 8,000 miles across. You have to be in this 100-mile patch in order to see it. And so, if you're just a random person on the planet, these just don't happen over you all the time, right? I mean, you can say, every night I go out, I can see the stars. That's great. Every night there are certain things you can see. Every day there are certain things you can see. But it might be several thousand years for a person on the Earth for this just to happen over their head. And so people travel all over the world to be able to see that total eclipse. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And then the thing is, the Earth and the moon and the sun don't always line up perfectly, okay? In fact, most of the time, the moon's a little high or a little low. We don't have an eclipse at all. So it sort of can kind of line up about once or twice a year. But when it does that, most of the time, only part of the shadow hits us, or the moon's a little too far away. And when that happens, lo and behold, you get a ring around the sun. You don't cover the whole sun, you only cover part of the sun. And that's really cool to see too, but it's not the same as when that corona comes out. And that is absolutely mind-boggling when that happens. So here's what's going to be happening in the next couple of years. And this is just unbelievably cool. We're going to have one of each. We're going to have what these annular eclipses, when the moon's a little too far, crossing the country in October of 2023. That's going to be super spectacular, great thing to go see. And then in April of 2024, that shadow of the moon is actually going to cross the whole country from Texas all the way to Maine. And it's going to last quite a while, 4.5 minutes. The sun's going to be completely covered. And every place in the country, whether you see the totality or annularity, you're going to see a partial eclipse anyway. Everybody in the country will see the sun covered a little bit.
Wow.
But if you're in that path, you will see the whole sun covered up. And it's amazing. People will be in tears as it happens. It's such a spectacular sight. And
it looks like the path goes to the north of New Hampshire, like up into Canada. Does it miss us?
It just clips northern New Hampshire, as a matter of fact. And I can show that to you. I can show you those maps in detail in a couple of minutes after we talk more about the eclipse itself. And I'll show you exactly the places that you can go to see these eclipses in totality, which is really super thing.
Do you want me to remind me when to remove the graphic and then when to bring it back? You want me to take it away for a while?
Yeah, why don't you take it away now? We can just talk about eclipses and then we'll bring it back.
Okay, good.
Show you more stuff.
So what science can be done during a solar eclipse? I know it's a rare opportunity to do some science and prove some things that have been postulated in the past. That was recently done with one of Einstein's theories. What what happened with the Einstein theory? What did they prove him to be right on, and what kind of science can be done in these upcoming eclipses?
So one of the greatest total eclipse stories goes back to 1919. So a little over 100 years ago, we're in 2022, 103 years ago, there was an eclipse. And part of what Einstein's theory predicted that Newton's gravity theory didn't was how much light would be bent by gravity. So light actually responds to gravity, something you wouldn't necessarily think, but it does. And if you want to prove that that's true, you have to see light go by something heavy, something that makes a lot of gravity. And of course, the sun makes lots of gravity. But the only time you can see stars near where the sun is if you blot out the sun, right? You can't see the stars during the day, but during an eclipse, you can. So in 1919, expeditions were sent out actually to South America and the South Pacific with cameras to take pictures during the eclipse of where the stars are. And then they came back later when the sun wasn't there, 6 months later, took another picture to measure how much the stars seemed to move. And it exactly matched what Einstein predicted.
So could go ahead.
It was just incredible. And that's what made Einstein world famous. That made big type on the front of the New York Times. Einstein proved right, new theory of gravity was due to those observations made by Sir Arthur Eddington. So that was really one of the greatest things for Einstein.
So that gave him credibility in most of the other stuff that he believed, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Made him world famous. Yeah, very, very cool.
Now, what about the science for these upcoming eclipses?
Right. So there are still things that are interesting and worthwhile doing. So we have satellites that have, disks that block out most of the sun, so we can watch the solar corona, constantly that way, which of course you couldn't do up until the 1970s. But getting high resolution images and watching how that atmosphere changes is something that you can't do unless you have really, really sharp pictures. So during the last eclipse we had in 2017, cameras were set up along the entire path of the eclipse so that you could get pictures and assemble them together in a movie, right? Here's what's happening to the sun over the span of a couple of hours. And we're able to see things changing and moving that we'd never seen before. So it's something that you could only do during an eclipse, which has a long period over land like this one does, where we could set up lots and lots of cameras and measure exactly what's happening there. Because there are a lot of things about the sun that we still don't understand. We don't know why that beautiful corona, all that beautiful white light around the sun, why it's so hot. It's at a temperature of 2 million degrees. And the sun is at a temperature of 6,000 degrees. So imagine if you had a pot of water you were boiling and the water was hotter than the flames. That wouldn't make any sense to you, right?
Right.
But that's what's on the sun. So we're trying to understand everything about how it gets hot and why it does what it does.
Any theories on that?
Yeah. Most of what happens on the sun is driven by magnetism. The gas is so hot, it's electrically conducting. There's electricity flowing everywhere. And that makes things wiggle back and forth. Those magnetic lines are moving back and forth, and that makes atoms smack into each other and get hot. That's our best theory right now, of these waves that travel through it. But it's hard to measure those things. And an eclipse gives us a chance to look for it and try to understand why that happens. And of course, that's connected to solar flares and these big explosions in the corona. And those affect our satellites, your power grid, your phones. So it's actually very important to understand that, not because it's cool and we're scientists and we like to do cool things, but right now our internet connection that we're using could be affected if there was a big solar flare that came. So understanding what the sun does has real life implications for everybody who's watching this video right now, right? Everybody's watching us talk is actually affected by the sun. You just don't know it. It's taken care of for you, but we need to understand that to be able to do it.
So you build telescopes and you have cameras mounted on the telescopes that you take to organizations and you do talks and you show them live shots of the sun. Can you see these big solar flares on those telescopes? And can these people see those flares?
Yeah, we can. I didn't queue up any of those pictures to show you today, but yes, you can do that. You can see these tongues of gas sticking off the edge of the sun. I don't remember if I got to show that to you when you came up to visit
You
one time.
did. That's what.
Yeah,
That's how I knew. Yeah.
yeah. So we can do that, and we can put that on camera and be streaming it just the way we're streaming our conversation today. And when it comes to the eclipse in 24, the eclipses in 23 and 24, I do plan to stream what we're seeing through the telescopes, and that'll be through, our site and Facebook, and we'll share that to your site, and all your viewers can watch the eclipse live wherever they are.
By the way, are you planning on building any more telescopes, a bigger one, a more adventurous one? I mean, are you done building telescopes? I can't imagine you'd be done.
No, I'm not. In fact, I'm working on another 10-inch mirror now, a short focal length telescope that'll be very portable. So I'm making that right now. And then I'm actually in the process of building. I've already made the optics. I haven't done the mechanics for a telescope, especially for looking at the sun. Very long focal length, made specially for getting high resolution views of the sun. I've made the mirrors, but I haven't built the mechanical parts for it yet. Yeah. We have lots of things in our lives. I got to get around to building it.
You actually grind the mirrors. That kind of blows me away. How do you do that?
So the process actually goes back a long way. We're much more efficient at it in modern times. But you take two pieces of glass and grit. It's sort of the same kind of stuff that's on your sandpaper, grit like that. And when you rub them together, the one on top, because it overhangs, gets bent like this, and the one on the bottom gets bent like that. So we're able to make the curved pieces of glass that the light will bounce off of. And then we use finer and finer kinds of grit to smooth it out. And then we polish it and make that surface create a nice sharp image. And you can do that by hand. People have been doing it by hand for a couple hundred years.
How do you measure how do you know when you got the right curvature?
So Leon Foucault, the guy who invented the pendulum, pendulums that you see in museums, in the mid-19th century, figured out a way where you can have a little light source like an LED. That light can bounce off the optic that you're looking at, the mirror, and that light comes back to a focus. And there's a way to measure with a little piece of metal where each part of the mirror is focusing. So you can polish more in one place or another. You see what's high or low, and you can actually see what the defects are and correct them all. And he did it with a kerosene lamp and a razor blade. You don't need high tech to do it.
Wow.
And you can see it. It's really spectacular.
I'm amazed that you can do that by hand, because by hand is not, well, it's, in some ways by hand is not exacting, but I guess since you can really be nuanced about your grinding, I guess it is exacting.
It is. It's quite amazing. Very, very cool.
Now you are part of at least one group who are planning events related to the eclipses. Can you talk about that? And you have a conference coming up at the Highland Center at Bretton Woods to plan how it's going to go. Can you talk about that some?
Yeah, absolutely. So eclipses, as we're talking about, are a very, very big deal. And so if any of your viewers remember 2017, literally millions of people traveled to be able to see the eclipse. And now that everybody knows how exciting it is in 2024, even more people are going to travel to see the eclipse. And so we have groups that are working to help towns and villages and businesses prepare and be ready for that. So I can show you some of what we're doing to make that work. So here we go. I will share this to you. Oh, we're sharing again?
Yeah.
Great. Move this out of the way. And yeah, you can see this. So the American Astronomical Society is holding a series of workshops. We've held one last spring virtually. We're doing another one this spring, which unfortunately is becoming virtual. We were supposed to meet in San Antonio. Because there are towns, as you can imagine, all the way through this, and they're going to have to deal with 10,000 people are going to show up. What do we need for police and medical support for these people? Do we have enough beds for people to sleep in, enough food for people to have, enough gas for people to buy? How are we going to handle traffic? And so there's a meeting in San Antonio this spring. Next year, there's a meeting in Rochester. And then another one, I forget where the third one is, Cleveland. And then, believe it or not, the final one, the one about 6 months before the eclipse, we're actually going to host here in New Hampshire. Because, believe it or not, the eclipse crosses northern New Hampshire, and we're going to be one of the places for people to come to. And of course, we're in beautiful mountain country, so it's a wonderful place for people to visit. And so we have set that up. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the map. Let's see. I'm going to stop sharing and then start sharing so I can share a different window.
Okay.
And then I'm going to start sharing and share screen. And now the window I need is this one. Here we go. And here's the map of the eclipse path across the country. And you can see that it crosses northern New Hampshire.
How far south does that band go? Well, what town?
In New Hampshire?
Yeah.
It just reaches Lancaster. Bretton Woods is below that. So we will, right where I'm sitting right now, we'll just miss it. But 20 minutes north of here, we'll be in the eclipse path. Now, the closer you are to the middle of it, this blue line in the middle, the longer it lasts. So if you're right at the edge in Lancaster, for example, it only lasts 43 seconds. But if you're on this blue line in the middle, it lasts 3.5 minutes. And if you're closer to the middle of the Earth, like in Texas, it lasts 4.5 minutes.
Wow.
So I will actually be leading a trip for a group of people who can travel with me to come to Central Texas. We're going to go to Killeen, Texas, because the eclipse is longer. And of course, the weather is likely to be clear. We're hoping, obviously, if it's cloudy, the sky still goes dark. It's still a very amazing experience. But the great experience is seeing the sun. You need to be someplace where it's likely to be clear. So Texas has a better shot at it. So you can see that the eclipse path crosses central Mexico and then works its way up across Texas. Now, the eclipse in 2023, the annular, also crosses Texas, as a matter of fact. And if you were in the town, for example, outside San Antonio, if you were in these towns here like Kerrville, you would actually get to see both eclipses, which is pretty amazing to be in one place and see two eclipses 6 months apart. Remember, we talked about an eclipse may not pass any place on Earth for a couple of thousand years.
Right.
Imagine being someplace where you get to see two in 1 year.
So it's kind of an economic jackpot for some of these towns along the path.
Yeah, exactly. It's a big economic opportunity, especially for us in New Hampshire. In April, we're usually kind of near the end of ski season and before hiking season. So a lot of places don't make much money in April and May. So this is a chance for everybody to take advantage of this and host visitors from all over the world.
What is the actual spot, the town in New Hampshire, where your coverage is going to be centered? Have you chosen a town yet?
The town that we'll be in Killeen, Texas.
But in New Hampshire,
in New Hampshire, the best places to go. I'll show you a couple of good spots to go here. In New Hampshire, you would like to be up north. So one of them is the town of Colebrook.
Colebrook is way up. It's right on the edge.
Or the town of Pittsburgh, which is also famous for moose. So if you're very excited about seeing moose, and who isn't excited about seeing moose, the town of Pittsburgh, New Hampshire would be a very good place to go.
So is Pittsburgh the town near the Connecticut Lakes, north of the Connecticut Lakes?
Yes, there is. We'll zoom in here. But up by the Connecticut Lakes here, here we go. Yeah, getting up near the Connecticut Lakes, would help. So if you're near Lake Francis State Park up here, anywhere along here will be a good place to go.
Interesting. Wow.
And then if you want to go to a really cool place and actually be near the center line, one of the places to go is in Maine. And one thing we talked about a while ago was the creation of the International Dark Sky Park.
Yes.
Up in Maine. And believe it or not, the eclipse is going to go right over it. So if you were to visit the Appalachian Mountain Club's lodge up here, you would be right in the middle of a place with a tremendously beautiful dark sky. And I'm going to show that to you up here. There we are. There's Metawisla. And believe it or not, the eclipse goes right over this.
Wow.
So you can stay in a gorgeous lodge. We'll get the eclipse path. You can see there you are. You're centered right on it. Look, you're right near the middle of the eclipse. Beautiful lodge, great food. We've got telescopes there. We'll be streaming. They'll obviously be showing our live stream, and a wonderful place to go watch the eclipse.
That'd probably be.
Those are some great places in New England to check out.
That lodge will probably be all booked up quickly, right? Because that's a prime spot.
Yeah, we certainly hope so.
You might as well talk a little bit about the Dark Sky organization.
Yeah. So there's I think we can stop sharing here, and we can go back to where we were. There we go. So dark skies are a real environmental issue because we have so much artificial light. We're creating all sorts of health and safety effects, and of course we're losing the stars and being able to see the night sky. So the premier organization working on this is called the International Dark Sky Association. The website is darksky.org. And as a matter of fact, if you go to our program website, which is mountainsofstars.org, and I urge everybody to visit our site, we've got lots and lots of great information. We're going to put lots of eclipse stuff up there as we get closer to it. But it's the IDA has worked for 20 years to try to help control light pollution. And one thing they do is when an area is protected, they designate it. So our Dark Sky Park is something that the IDA has approved as being dark and will remain dark indefinitely. So dark sky places are few and far between. But if you go to their site, darksky.org, you can find some great places to go and actually still see the stars.
So the website is mountainsofstars.org or darksky.org or both?
Mountainsofstars.org is our site,
okay,
where we have all of our information and links to it. And then their site is darksky.org.
Okay, great. Now, tell me more about the trip to Texas. I think that's pretty interesting. You're in charge of it?
Yes, I am.
You have to book all the hotels and everything?
Yeah. I have a partner who's helping me run this. But in 2017, I helped lead 2 groups of people to the mountains of Idaho, where we were on the center line for the eclipse. And we spent the rest of the week both observing at night and hiking and visiting the beautiful area up there. We'll be doing the same thing in Texas. So we'll be arriving in Texas on April 2nd of 24. And then the rest of that week will be in the town of Killeen. And then the last night we'll be back in Austin on the 9th, and everybody will fly home. And over that week, we'll be doing stargazing, we'll be observing the sun, we'll be visiting a whole bunch of the cool sites in Texas Hill Country. They have some great wineries and parks and hiking and so on. And I'll be giving presentations and workshops on, what an eclipse is, as we talked earlier, but in more detail, what's the science? What do we understand about it? What are we studying during the eclipses? How do they happen? A lot about how we're connected to space, get everybody that we talk to understand our connection to the environment, and then how to prepare for the eclipse. And then on eclipse day, we'll have all sorts of telescopes and cameras set up. We'll supply everybody with eclipse glasses. So this is very important because everybody in the country will see the eclipse, at least partially. You need to wear protective glasses that will dim the sun enough that it's safe to look at. And you can get them, but be very careful. Make sure that they're certified, because during the last eclipse, there were a lot of sort of pirated glasses that went out that weren't safe. So make sure the American Astronomical Society has certified your glasses as being safe. But they're a little cardboard frame with little pieces of film, and you can look right up at the sun and you can watch it right from your backyard. So we'll have
What
eclipse glasses and everything for everybody.
what happens if, or I should say, why does it happen? The damage to your eyes if you don't wear the glasses. What is actually going on biologically there?
Actually, you're burning your retina. So the same way that you can take a magnifying glass and light a piece of paper on fire by concentrating the sun,
Yeah.
that's what's happening. The lens in your eye is going to concentrate the sun, and it will actually burn little holes in your retina, and those areas will be blind. And that's not good. You don't want to go blind. That's a bad thing.
Yes. Well, all right. This is big stuff. By the way, you were at the Bretton Woods Highland Center right now.
I'm actually at the Nordic Center.
The Nordic Center. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is right.
Cross-country skiing. Yeah.
It's right off to the side of the Mount Washington Hotel, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And I find this interesting and cool. You are a cross-country ski instructor, correct?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So it's fun to take people out and get them skiing, and we have a beautiful area here. We have over 60 miles of trail, so you can spend all day or many days skiing through the woods. It's a great way to be outdoors and get exercise in the winter. Very safe and beautiful countryside, and you can do it anywhere. You can cross-country ski on any trail. So it's fun to take people out and teach them how to do it.
So the big challenge in cross-country skiing, besides being in shape, is when you're trying to move forward for the ski to grip in the snow, and then when you're gliding to not grip, which is pretty scientific. How does that happen? There are various ways and technologies that make that happen.
A cross-country ski is really cool. The ski is arched, okay? So it's flexed, and right under your foot on the bottom, there's always something that's kind of sticky. It can be a pattern that's been ground into the bottom of the ski that looks little fish scales. We call them fish scales. It can be a patch of a felt like a mohair, or for racing skis, we use a wax. You put a wax on there. So if you just lay the ski on the snow, it slides. But if you push down with your foot, you push down hard, that grippy stuff hits. Then you can push back, and then the ski will glide. And push down with your foot, push back, and then the ski will glide. So when we're doing our lessons, a big part of it is teaching people how to put their weight where it needs to be so that you can push and then glide, because glide is everything. If you're gliding, you're not working, right? The ski is just moving forward with you. And that's the fun part. When you learn to glide, you can just cruise along on the snow. It's really, really beautiful.
And when you get into the waxing, there are a bunch of different waxes depending on the temperature. Like one given wax will only be good for 2 or 3 degrees, right? You need to move on to the different wax.
Well, it's not quite 2 or 3 degrees. It's about 10 degree windows. So there'd be a wax you'd use from like -10 to like 0-ish, one from 0 to maybe 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and then there's special stuff you use if it's really warm, and the snow is sort of melting. So about 3 or 4 waxes that you would use for skiing if you're using these racing type high-end skis. But the skis we use a lot have this cloth patch on the bottom called the skin ski, and they're wonderful. You don't have to use the waxes, and they're a very efficient ski. They're fun to ski on, so we use those a lot.
I'm glad we had a chance to talk about this because it doesn't pop into people's mind. It's not on the top of their mind, cross-country skiing as an activity. And it's fun to have activities in the winter so you don't have to just hole up in your apartment. And cross-country skiing is a good COVID kind of activity because you're outdoors and separate, a little bit separated from whoever else you are skiing with.
Exactly.
Are these trails groomed?
Yes. Yep. Our trails are groomed. So a machine goes out there and compacts the snow and makes it nice and smooth and puts grooves into the snow that your skis actually slide in. So it's really cool.
I got to get up there and do that. Anything else you want to cover? Anything else you want to cover on the eclipses? Did we cover it all?
One more thing. We've mentioned on previous interviews the Galileo scope program that I also ran, and Galileo scopes are available. And they are available with solar filters. So as we get closer to the eclipse, you'll be able to have a little telescope, be able to watch the eclipse with a telescope with a filter on it that makes it safe to do that. So Galileo scopes, if you go to galileoscope.org, also linked on our page, mountainsofstars.org. If you go there, find Galileo scope, click on that, and you can get a group of people, order a bunch of them. So every one of your kids and family members can have a telescope. And then when we get to the eclipse, we'll be offering the solar filters that you can put on the front of it. And then you can watch the sun on any day. As the sun is getting more active, you can watch sunspots all the time. And then, of course, have it for the eclipse as well.
I'm looking forward to having it set up so we can live stream what you see on your telescopes. You have that new, relatively new rig with those super cool cameras that you got and mounted. And folks, a long time ago, I did a piece, a video that showed Doug's observatory in New Hampshire, and he talks about the telescopes he makes and how he makes them and shows them. So I need to get that up there so that you can see that as well. Doug Arion, astronomer, teacher, great guy, outdoorsman as well. A mad hiker. He hikes up mountains like you wouldn't believe. And thank you so much for spending time with us. And don't leave after we stop going live. Let's book our next session.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Bradley. I love chatting with you. Hope this has been interesting for the audience, and look forward to this great eclipse. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Thanks, Doug. Bye-bye.